Hello friends and fashion lovers, welcome and welcome back. Thank you for clicking on this video. My name is Esther and I'll be showing you how to make this lovely ruched dress. I use about 2 yards of fabric and I also use 1/2 inch elastic for my sleeve. So right here I have my fabric folded in half for both the front and the back. So I've already marked out the guideline. From the guideline I'm going to mark my desired dress length plus 6 inch for hemming and also for the extra length for ruching. From the shoulder I'm going to mark the chest line plus about 1/4 inch seam allowance to join the shoulder. On the guideline I'm going to mark half my shoulder width measurements plus seam allowance since I'll be having a sleeve. And I'm repeating the same marking on the chest line. On the neckline I'm going to mark a neck width, then I'm going to come right here and mark my shoulder slope. But this neck width is subject to change very soon. On the chest line, I'm placing 1/4 of the round chest measurement plus 3 inches. These 3 inches include 2 inches of ease and 1 inch of seam allowance. If you want a more fitted dress, please reduce the ease. Next is for me to mark from the shoulder to the hip line. So locate where your hip is and indicate it. A shape dress doesn't really require a waist measurement. On the hip line, I'm going to place 1/4 of my hip measurement plus 3 inches. I'm going to take the measurement I have on the hip line down to the hem line. So I'm going to go ahead and connect from the hip to the hem line. Then I'm going to connect from the chest line to the hip line. Don't forget to blind the hip area. Just in case you want a bit of contour along the waistline, go ahead and mark from shoulder to waist and put 1/4 of your round waist measurement plus 3 inches of ease like you did to other parts. Then you do well to connect. Now to connect my armhole, I'm going to find the midpoint of this line and I'm going to go in by 3/4 of an inch for the front, and for the back I'll leave it straight for the back. And if you don't have a curve ruler, you can just come up here by about 1 inch and you can connect to form your armhole. It's all up to you, but since I have a curve ruler I'm going to use just that. This part is totally optional, but I'm going to raise the back of my dress, so you can just leave yours normal like the front, but I just decided to raise the back of my dress by 0.75 inches. That's 2 centimeters. So after raising the back, I'm just going to go ahead and connect the armhole. Remember, for the back armhole I'm not going in by any inches like I did for the front, so I'm just going to connect that. Don't worry, I know it might look all confusing, but you'll get what I mean. For the neck width, since I won't be having a zipper or opening at the back, so I'm marking 4 inches for the neck width. For the neck depth, the front I'm using 6 inches while I'm using 2 inches for the back. So you can use your desired neck depth and neck width, but make sure it's wide enough to accommodate your head. So now I'm going to cut the back first so that you can see how it goes. Now for the front neckline, this is it. I'm not cutting on a double, you will still see the difference. Please try not to cut both of them the second time. So for my front armhole, I'm just cutting that as well, so you can see the difference between the front and the back. And then I'm going to cut the rest of the piece as normal for both the back and the front. So after cutting, I'm going to go ahead and notch where my pocket will sit. Pocket is always about 2 inches below the waistline or about 9 inches from the chest line. So I'm marking 9 inches from the chest line, and that is where my pockets will sit. I'll be using a cutout from my armhole to make my pocket, so you can see how handy that comes in. So I've placed it on there and I made sure that I have about 7-inch opening. So this is about 7-inch, which I'm totally pleased with it. So I'm just going to place my hand and make a curve. You can just make a random curve. Just make sure that it's just enough for your hand to go in. And I have 4 pieces of this for my pocket right here. So I'm going to move this away and quickly cut out my sleeves. So right here I have my fabric unfold and I have 2 pieces. The width should be your armhole plus ease and seaming allowance. So just make sure that the width is enough and the length should be your desired length. So I'm marking my sleeve cap right here plus seaming allowance, since this is a freehand, so it's not patterned. Next is for me to mark my armhole and the 3 inches I've been using on the chest line, and I'm going to connect this to form my sleeve head. So just make sure you have your desired sleeve length plus hemming allowance, since we'll be making casing for the elastic. So I'm just marking 1 inch for my casing right here. I'm using a 1/2 inch elastic, so 1 inch is pretty much okay for me. So next is to put my round sleeve measurement, which is 12 inches. Half of it is 6 inches. Then I'm adding 3 inches of ease to my round sleeve measurement, since I'll be having an elastic at the end. So with that, I'm pretty much done with the sleeve. I'm just going to cut it out. I have this strip that is 22 inches by 3 inches, which I'll be using for a sleeve tie, and I'll show you how to go about it later. So right here, I'm just going to open my dress like so, and I'm going to place my pocket right side facing at the notch point that is meant for the pocket. Then I'm going to go ahead and stitch the pocket, and I'm doing this for both the front and the back. After stitching, place the front and back and join them at the shoulder, and then I'll be using a bias tape to finish up the neckline neatly. So after stitching the shoulder, I'm just going to go ahead and stitch on the sleeve. So just notch the center of that sleeve and go ahead and stitch that sleeve in place. After stitching the sleeve, I'm just going to go ahead and hem the dress. Don't worry, I did not skip any parts. So now that the sleeve is stitched and the bottom of the dress is hemmed, it's time to go ahead and join the side of the dress. So you want to make sure when you're stitching the side of the dress, you stitch with a seaming allowance of not less than 1 inch. Not less than 1 inch. You will know why soon. And then you are going to take a strip, and this strip is measured from where I want my ruche to be. You want to have 2 times that length, double that length plus extra. I want the ruche to start from the pocket, and the width of this strip is 1.5 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch this strip and turn it right side out, or you just fold and just make sure you stitch it. After joining the dress by the side, it's time to come to that part that you want the ruche to be. I've also stitched my rope for the ruche. So this is that strip that I had made earlier on, and it's going to go right there. I'm just going to go ahead and snip the seaming allowance. So from under the pocket, I'm going to snip that seam allowance. Be careful not to cut your actual seam. So now that I've snipped the seam allowance, I'll be able to open my seam. So now I'm just going to fold in about 1/4 inch of the raw edge. Then I'm going to stitch down the seam allowance, and this will form a casing for my ruche. I'm going to also repeat the same step for the other side by snipping that seam allowance and folding in about 1/4 inch, then stitching that down to form a casing for my ruche. For the sleeve, I've already hemmed it and I've made a casing for my elastic. for the elastic, just go take a tape and measure where you want the sleeve to sit, and whatever you have, just take away about 1 inch. You can take more depending on how you want the elastic to fit. So I just take about 1 inch away from it, and that is the amount of elastic that I cut. I'll still be stitching this elastic as well. Just go ahead and thread your elastic with the aid of a safety pin on the elastic casing that you have made. Don't forget to stitch the elastic to secure it in place, and you're repeating the same step for the second sleeve. And now this is how it is after I've stitched down that seam allowance. So I'm going to use the safety pin and pass in my strip, which will be my ruche right there. When you get to the top part, don't forget to just cross it over and continue on the second side. And with that, you have yourself a ruched side. So I'm just going to turn it right side out so that you see how it looks. So this is it. For the tie, this is optional. I have 3 inches by 22 inches. So I'm basically going to stitch it, keeping a space in the middle to turn it right side out. Then I'll give it a good press after that. So with my strip stitch and turn right side out, I'm just going to locate the middle of my sleeve. So just locate the center point of your sleeve and also the center point of that strip as well. So go ahead and pin it. Make sure you don't pin it on the elastic. You're going to stitch that in place, and you're doing this for both sides. When it's all stitched down, you can go ahead and enjoy your dress. Let me know if this tutorial was helpful, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please, I'm begging you to subscribe now. Thank you. See you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.